Thanks very much for your time, David. This is Mike Anthony and David Flint at the University of Michigan. We are talking about some new pricing for elevator inspections. And David, as someone who chaired the State of Michigan Committee, Elevator Safety Division Committee, and also knows the whole LARA process, has been our assistant on this project for nearly 2 years now. This is one where we're trying to go to every board and we're asking for a stronger user interest. Generally, in the state of Michigan and elsewhere, but especially Michigan, where labor is very important, you'll end up seeing a heavier hand in labor, and then also enforcement, product manufacturers, and everybody who is selling to the user, in our case, the education industry, is on the board and has a vote. And the person who actually has to pay for it all is not on the board. So we think that since we are the largest non-residential building construction market in the $360 billion Michigan gross domestic product, in this $360 billion state of Michigan annual budget, or gross domestic state budget, that we certainly should have a voice here. So now we're getting down to the specifics, and there's been a change here, and I'm just going to let David speak freely. He knows the ins and outs of this. I guess my main question is, what meaning does this new rule have on us, starting from safety? Does it improve safety? Does it reduce safety? And then talk to us about the cost. Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, on April 5th, the State of Michigan Elevator Safety Division Acting Chief Bob Babinski sent out a notice, contractors bulletin, and I got to say that it's addressed to elevator contractors, but not all elevator contractors received the notice, so there's going to be a lot of pushing back and forth here because some of the contractors did not receive this notice. But the issue is that how, when you're applying for a permit, to determine the fees that you have to pay. Previously, it was noted and has always been that if you were to change a hydraulic valve, the associated piping that is involved connecting that valve, had it been necessary to change the immediate piping, that it was all included with the valve. Now the state is saying that no, it's not included, that is a separate item, and another $50 to add on to 50 to 100 to add on to the permit fee. So instead of a $150 initial permit fee, now you're looking at $250 permit fee. If you change the Vicolic fittings that connected that, now you're asking for another item to be added. So now you're looking at $350. The maximum on a modernization process, and that's what a valve replacement is considered, is a modernization of the equipment. The maximum fee is $395. So they're pushing everything towards the maximum rather than the $150 that it was, and then the inspector come out and inspect it, you'd get the sign off and everything would be fine. Well, now you're going to pay $395 for that same work. Well, that's an additional $245 that comes out of our pocket. That's for each time that you draw this permit. So if you're in the process of upgrading your equipment because of potential failure of the valve, you could go through, such as the University of Michigan has 625 elevators on campus, and better than half of those are hydraulic. you had to go through and change all your hydraulic valves, all of a sudden that becomes quite a cost factor. Not that you would have to. It's just a matter that as an example, I use that.
Well, let's see. Aren't we rolling over about 10 elevators a year? How often? How often of the 625 that we have? By the way, this number here is the additional cost from the old fee.
Yes.
So I didn't use. So this is actually the incremental increase here. So I'll make that clear. So I thought I'd throw some numbers around here while I have you here. So, but we're only doing, what, 15 elevators? 15, 20 a year?
The modernization rate is usually anywhere from 6 to 10 per year, but that's usually done by a contractor, and the permit fees would be included in that. Mm-hmm. And that would be a matter that you'd be paying the maximum fee at that time. What we're talking about is in your normal course of business, you run into a problem with a valve and you have to replace it. Instead of paying $150, you're paying $395. That's where that cost hasn't been captured. You go to improve the appearance of a cab, and instead of just paying $150 for a cab modernization, what they're doing is they're taking that $150 for the side panels, for the wainscoting, and then if you wanted to replace the ceiling, it's an additional fee. If you wanted to replace the lights in the car to more energy efficient, that's another fee. And each one of them has to be inspected by the state inspector. So all of a sudden, we're up to the $395 for everything that we're doing. This hasn't been brought in front of the Elevator Safety Board, and it will be brought up at the next Elevator Safety Board meeting as to why this was necessary. The state is claiming that LARA is running at a deficit. Well, if they enforce the rules and the people installing things illegally, they may be able to come up with those fees. But when they find someone, in most cases, doing work that a permit hasn't been drawn upon, they're not taking that contractor to task and making them pay the fees and fine them. That's part of their problem. That's not the general public's problem, and having to find ways to circumvent the fee system and raise the fee rates by adding additional work that's always been included.
Okay. Well, all right. So it sounds to me like we have to decide how much of an cost impact that has with us. We are in this space. We will convey it to our colleagues elsewhere in the state of Michigan, and maybe the same tendency will be going on in the region. Very often, contiguous states, the regulators in contiguous states all go to the same conferences, so they inspire each other, for better or for worse. And you may find what's happening in Michigan being conveyed into other states, or conversely, maybe what's being done in other states is being conveyed onto us. So it sounds to me like we have a little bit of time if we're going to prepare anything here, but I don't know. We're going to have to decide where this ranks in our priority list. It strikes me that, but this is only dealing with an emergency. This is only dealing with an emergency fee, something that has to be done within 3 days. Is that correct?
No, it's not. It's for any permit work, anything that is being changed. And if you went into ASME A17.1 under 8.6, 8.7, it will tell you what items consist of a modernization. Okay, So any of those items that are changed, even though it may be in the normal course of business, will require a permit. So if you go into those things, such as changing door locks, not the contacts, but the door lock assembly, all of a sudden that becomes permit work. So you're looking at things that you never had to draw permits for in the past. Now you will have to.
Okay, so you say, so here's the current version of ASME. It may not be the same version as the legacy. I don't know if we're up to date. This is the most up-to-date version, 2013. Is that correct? Or 2013 is the most up-to-date version. Is that correct, Dave?
Yes, it is. But Michigan's still under the 2010.
Sure. Okay. Well, that happens often. So you say the criteria. What section should I look at here, David? Section 8?
8.7. 8.7.
Okay.
Alteration.
Hey, I have to tell you,
Anytime.
the reason I'm interested in this is that I think we could use some of this in the electrical world. What is an alteration? What isn't? Now, first of all, we have to acknowledge that people have a very, when you're talking about being in an elevator, you're pretty vulnerable. Even as I try to beat beat cost out of this, I'm trying to think. Could you cite where is that section I should look at, Dave?
8.7.
Okay. So as I travel here, that we always have to answer the question: how can you possibly be against safety? And of course, I'll say, well,
it's not a matter of being Mike, it's not a matter of being against safety. It's a matter of how much you have to pay for the safety.
Well, that's right. And whenever I ask, somebody asks me that, because we have a lot of ardent safety folks, that the natural progression for them is to be wearing a walking helmet. I don't know if you know, there's actually walking helmets now. You're walking down the street, there'll be a helmet just in case you fall over. So it's more for kids, though. But of course, I'll always say that we could reduce all traffic fatalities if everybody were to drive 2 miles an hour. But as a society, we decide that we can tolerate a certain level of risk, and so many people will die because we're we agree that people are driving 25 to 70 miles an hour. So that's my answer to that. It's never really emotionally satisfying, but I do want to always preface our discussions with a recognition that when you get in an elevator, you don't want to get stuck. And I don't want anybody to think that I am also an elevator passenger. So getting to your alterations here. So the alteration, the state of Michigan is its rules are inspired, if not brought in whole cloth from here. This is really very interesting because, as you know, on the electrical board, all work above $100 has to be by a licensed journeyman and inspected by a licensed and accredited and fully trained inspector. All the work over $100, and so, what do we call minor work? To have something at the national level, we don't have this in the National Electrical Code. For those of you who don't know my background, I've been on the National Electrical Code for 20 years now, and I have a front row seat on how this all changes. So this is actually rather inspirational. I think the National Electrical Code is older than this particular document, but so this document seems to evolve to the point where you actually have you define what the work types are, and in a certain thing, I think it looks to me admirable because we don't have this at all. So I only raise that because now this work, as it's described in a national standard, will be the foundation for all these fees.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. And
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, it's a matter that anything that's listed nationally, such as if you went into A7 and it's the valve replacement, okay, the associated piping is considered to be part of that work, okay? But the state of Michigan is saying, no, it's a separate item because of pressure vessels, okay? So, you have an argument. And I think at the July meeting, we can at least bring it up and show our concern that the state didn't have any members of the Elevator Safety Board or anyone on board to discuss this with that we're aware of before they implemented this contractor's bulletin, which they didn't send out to every contractor. So how would they all know?
Yeah. Well, the state has its budget limits also. So, you and I work for a large organization, and we can understand how communication doesn't travel in a straight line. Very often it doesn't travel. So, I can commiserate. What I do like, though, is that we have some time. We were to answer our first question.
I got to interrupt you there. I got to interrupt you for a second, and that is, okay, these contractors' bulletins are sent out by the Elevator Safety Division, which the Elevator Safety Division has a list of all the contractors, and because they're licensed contractors, and they have a list, and they post it on the website that you can connect to find a licensed contractor. So why wouldn't they send it out to every contractor? Because they already have his address.
Okay. All right. I'm corrected. All right. Yeah, you'd think that they would be able to do something here. You ought to be able to just simply go here and see where the latest the latest information. But as somebody who runs websites, I can understand how they do that. It's not even showing up Google. So look, we probably do need to close out here. We're running up against our time limit on elevators. So I think a program going forward is at least we can let people in the state of Michigan know what's happened here. For U of M, if this were fully realized, we're looking at $153,000, but we don't do this many, right? So, but we do have a fair number of elevators. How many elevators are in the state of? You said there's 66,000 elevators, and there's what, 33,000 that are actually working? Is that the number you gave me some months ago?
No, it's actually right around 40,000 that are in service of different types of equipment. That includes escalators, dumbwaiters, moving walks, elevators, hydraulic traction. So it's all types of vertical transportation equipment that falls under A17 and A10-4.
Okay, so you're looking at something on the order of again, this is incremental cost, incremental price increase across 40,000 elevators, $10 million out of a $360 billion state gross domestic product. I mean, $9 million. $10 million is significant, but it's not huge. But it means a lot to a lot of.
It wouldn't be $10 million because you wouldn't have to draw an emergency permit every year on every car.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe it's only four. Maybe it's only $1 million. Maybe we're only doing 10% of them. So that's fine. I just want to order of magnitude here, just to put get the broad contours of the cost impact. Okay, so let's add this to our list of see what we can do here on July 22nd, and we'll prepare a list, and we'll have another state teleconference sometime, well, two of them before then. Then we'll let the other colleges and universities in the state of Michigan know about this. So I think I'm going to close it out. That's probably enough of of an update for any. Before I close this recording, are there any closing thoughts that you want others who will be listening to this know about, David?
The only thing is attend the board meetings, find out what's going on, then be an active participant and promote the codes and the safety of the individuals to the general public.
Very well said. Thank you, David.